On America Tonight, fighting for the right to die.
I want my final days to be as happy as possible, and I want to live my life until the bad outweighs the good.
Also, the fight to live.
This $85 prescription will be some people's only option. Everyone needs to read what is in this bill, because this is bad medicine.
And the promise to Brittany.
Death was imminent for Brittany. There wasn't a cure, there wasn't anything that was going to change the fact that she would die. The manner in which she died, that's what she had control over.
Inside the debate in California that could ripple across the nation. Should medically assisted suicide be legalized?
We cannot legislate morality. This is a matter of personal choice.
And thank you for joining us. I'm Adam May with this America Tonight special report. Tonight we tackle a sensitive subject we will all face: death. If you think about the way you want to die, you might say peacefully in your sleep, or maybe surrounded by family and friends. What if you could plan that and avoid a drawn-out, sometimes painful death because of diseases or cancer? The debate over medically assisted suicide is rapidly heating up, and soon it could be a real option for millions more Americans. For those on the front lines of this battle, all eyes right now are on California. That's where one husband made a promise to Brittany.
We cannot legislate morality. This is a matter of personal choice.
California lawmakers debate becoming the next state to legalize medically assisted suicide. One man watching knows the issue as well as anyone.
The mainstay of killing through physician-assisted suicide is a drug called pentobarbital. It works by suffocating victims.
And all of the arguments that they bring up, oh, it's a slippery slope, oh, the person's simply depressed, this is an act of desperation, a cry for help, there's going to be coercion, abuses, all these things, the exact same arguments that were brought up 20 years ago. And here we are 20 years later, and after it being in practice in Oregon for 17 years, there has not been a single case of any of those concerns.
Dan Diaz was married to Brittany Maynard, the California woman suffering from terminal brain cancer, who openly lived out her final days, advocating for the right to die.
I still have enough joy, and I still laugh and smile with my family and friends enough that it doesn't seem like the right time right now, but it will come because I feel myself getting sicker. It's happening each week.
The couple briefly moved to Oregon, where doctors can legally prescribe lethal medication.
And my husband is such a lovely man. I want him to, I understand everyone needs to grieve, but I want him to be happy.
Brittany ended her life in November 2014.
People really need to think through this for themselves. What's worse, a peaceful passing or being tortured to death? Death was imminent for Brittany. There wasn't a cure, there wasn't anything that was going to change the fact that she would die. The manner in which she died, that's what she had control over.
How do you think Brittany would, if she could speak to us right now, how do you think she would describe her end-of-life experience?
It's something that her and I talked about, in the months and weeks leading up to it. There certainly is fear. Death is a topic that nobody wants to talk about, but Brittany was brave enough, wise enough to deal with the reality that the tumor, it's not stopping.
The 29-year-old became the face of Compassionate Choices, an organization pushing states to legalize the option of physician assistance in dying. The controversial end-of-life choice is currently authorized in just 5 states, but since Maynard's death, about 24 additional states, plus the District of Columbia, have taken up the issue. Diaz says he made a promise to Brittany to continue her fight.
It's amazing that one person with one voice can make such a difference. However, I'd say that the fact that it's getting attention and support, that's just reflective of the attitudes of the general public. Nationwide, 74% are actually in favor of the individual being in control of their own dying process. It is just a matter of time. State by state, we'll fight these battles to get this option in the books.
The words used in this debate make a big difference. A recent Gallup poll revealed 70% of Americans favor allowing doctors to end life using painless means. But when you call it assisted suicide, support plummets to just 51%. By not calling it suicide, what are proponents trying to achieve here?
What they get is the ability to gloss over hard realities about what's really being proposed.
Aaron Cariotti is a specialist in psychiatry and medical ethics.
When they poll people and they say, are you in favor of physician-assisted suicide, most people say no.
The California Medical Association, long against the idea, recently reduced its stance to neutral. But it's still controversial with many doctors.
This runs directly contrary to a long tradition in medicine of ethics going all the way back to the Hippocratic Oath, reaffirmed by the American Medical Association's principles of ethics. Physicians have to use our knowledge and skills only for the purposes of health and healing.
Have you worked with patients that are contemplating ending their life because of medical pain?
I have worked with patients that have said things offhand along the lines of, I don't think I can go on anymore. Sometimes that's interpreted as a request for assisted suicide. What you come to find is that there's something psychologically or in terms of their social support or medically that we need to do a better job to address. And once we do that, this desire to die vanishes. Suicide is a distress signal. It's a cry for help.
As for Dan Diaz, he says he's only begun to fight, to deliver on his promise to Brittany.
Why are you still out there on the front fighting for the right to die for all Californians?
As taxing as this legislative effort is, I think that for me, it is somewhat therapeutic. And knowing that I'm keeping my promise to Brittany, I think that's, it kind of helps me continue, and this makes me feel good. But even beyond California, there's 44 other states that don't have the legislation, and so my efforts, I'll continue.
Did you wish that she would have given you any more time?
Well, I always wish that she's still here. I mean, I look around, and every time I see a photo of her, I think to myself, that's my baby. Man, the deal was we were supposed to be together forever. That was the deal. That's why we got married. So there's all of that. There's frustration, anger. But my wife took control over her dying process. She harmed no one else along the way. A peaceful passing, surrounded by her loved ones. We should all be so lucky.
A vote in the California House that would have pushed the bill forward has just been delayed. It's been rescheduled now for July the 7th. And I do want to take a moment to talk about some of the language that we're using in this debate. Both sides don't like certain terms. We are using the term medically assisted suicide. That is the preferred term according to the Associated Press Style Guide, and that is the blueprint for journalists. Up next, we continue our in-depth look at the right to die. My emotional interview with a mother of 4 young children facing death and fighting the California legislation.
There are very real problems with this bill.
Proponents say, though, that this is a choice bill. That no doctor will make you take this pill ever.
No, but they can take away options.
In just the last year, lawmakers in 24 states put controversial end-of-life bills up for public debate. In the U.S., there's growing support to allow terminally ill patients to end their life with a prescription pill. That option is currently available in just a couple of states, but one bill up for debate in California is gaining momentum and could have a ripple effect across the entire country. Our special report continues now with a look at the opposition fighting for every last breath.
I'm not afraid to die. We're all dying. I think most people are afraid to talk about death, whereas, you know, for me it's part of my life is to talk about death.
Stephanie Packer's body isn't nearly as strong as her spirit. A mother of 4 young children, she's dying from multiple ailments. Every day with her family is a gift.
Hold on, wait for me. The actual dying, I'm not afraid of that. It's going to happen however it happens and whenever it happens, and I hope it's later than sooner. My fears are all for what happens when my kids get hurt. And who's going to stay up and worry about them all night long? That's what the mom does, you know. I do. That's my job.
Packer has joined the fight against California's SB 128, also called the End of Life Bill. It would allow doctors to write terminally ill patients a prescription for lethal medication. Packer would easily meet the criteria.
Scleroderma is my primary condition. I also have lupus, which could attack other organs. I also have trigeminal neuralgia, also known as the suicide disease. 50% of trigeminal neuralgia patients kill themselves within the first 2 years of having the disease.
Why is that?
It is known as the most excruciatingly painful condition in medical practice.
Are you afraid of this pain?
Very much, because there's nothing I can do about it. The medicine doesn't help fast enough. You just kind of have to hold your breath.
How much longer do you think you have?
No idea.
Medical records reveal doctors gave Packer 3 years to live 3 years ago. Although she's running out of treatment options, for this devout Catholic, ending her life with a pill is unthinkable.
Are you religiously motivated in this? Is this your primary reason? Or?
It is definitely part of my reason, but it most definitely is not my only reason. There are very real problems with this bill.
Opponents say, though, that this is a choice bill. That no doctor will make you take this pill ever. No insurance company can force you to do it.
No, but they can take away options for you.
To save money?
Absolutely. End-of-life care is the most expensive care out there.
Like many against medical aid in dying, Packer is most alarmed by the case of Barbara Wagner in 2008. The lung cancer patient in Oregon was denied a $4,000 a month cancer drug, and instead, the state health plan offered an inexpensive prescription to end her life.
In Oregon, this law has been in effect for almost 2 decades now. So we have a lot of data and a lot of experience about how it worked in Oregon.
Tony Broaddus is the director of Compassion and Choices California, the main group lobbying in favor of SB 128.
There have not been significant problems in Oregon. Opponents talk about those same 6 or 7 cases over and over again. And most of them, if you look a little more closely, you understand that the law does work as intended.
How does religion play into this debate?
If your religion tells you you shouldn't do this and it's wrong for you to do this, then I certainly would not want you to choose this option, because that would go against your deeply held personal values. I just think that that works both ways. The issue here is really that the government should not be in the business of choosing one religion over another in terms of how the law works.
Is this really an issue of choice?
Part of getting the medication, I've heard this over and over again, is not whether you take it or not. It's knowing that that option is there, knowing you can have a peaceful death. and that allows you to live more fully.
What are you telling me?
But Stephanie's choice is different. She wants to honor her Catholic faith, and taking her own life would be a sin. Instead, she's researching every option to manage her pain, holding out hope for an 11th hour medical discovery to keep her alive.
How do you envision your final moments?
I don't know. I don't want my kids to watch me die. I don't want them to find me dead. I think that's where I rely on my faith, because I don't have those answers. And I think it's okay not to have all the answers. And I think as humans, that's where we fault, is not being able to have control.
You know, we're talking about your end of life. We're talking about your kids, what their future will be like without you in it. And yet here you are, fighting against this. Why?
This $85 prescription will be some people's only option if something like this passes. Everyone needs to read what is in this bill and not just come to the table and say it's a choice, because this is bad medicine.
Don't get ready. What?
Fearing a future she's unlikely to witness as she fights for every last breath. And many disability rights groups are also opposed to the bill. They're concerned it could encourage people to give up fighting to live, or even lead to pressure by family members to end life prematurely. And coming up next, our special report continues. We meet a woman suing to end her life, unwilling to wait for California lawmakers, and ready to take action her own way.
It won't be a slow, painful death.
And welcome back to our special report. We're taking a deep look into the issue of medically assisted suicide. California could be the next state to legalize this end-of-life option after a bill already passed the Senate, and right now it's working its way through the state assembly. Now, at the same time, some terminally ill patients aren't waiting for this new law. They're pursuing legal action. I sat down for an exclusive interview with one plaintiff. She is suing for the right to die. Elizabeth Wallner loves bringing fruits and vegetables to life in her garden, hoping it helps her avoid death.
There's a constant feeling of waiting for that left shoe to drop. There's never a moment where I don't have cancer. It's hard to, make plans or think far ahead in the future.
You got a lot to say, kid.
At 47, her life was turned upside down. The single mother in Sacramento was diagnosed with stage 4 colon cancer.
How severe was the diagnosis?
Well, nobody really said anything, and so I went into my colon surgery surgeon, and I said, I got a 15-year-old son. I need to know what I'm really dealing with. And he said he would give me no more than 18 months to live. So it was pretty severe.
Do you mind showing me the scarring? Is it?
It's fine.
The treatment was excruciating and left Wallner scarred from numerous surgeries. Her teenage son stayed by her side when she got severely ill from chemotherapy.
Knowing my son has been and would have been so the most impacted by this is by far the worst part. I mean, death for the person who's dying, it's like, well, it's over. So, but, leaving a 15-year-old kid on his own, the idea is unimaginable.
For the last 4 years, Wallner has been beating the odds. And since her latest treatment in the spring, she doesn't know if her cancer is growing again or not. But this time, she's taking an unusual course of action, suing for the right to legally end her life if and when she says the time is right.
I don't have any faith in palliative care. After one of the surgeries, my lungs started filling up with fluid, and they went in to put a drain in my lungs, and I was literally in surgery, knocked out, and I was screaming in pain. And that's how I want to. I don't want to end my life that way, and I absolutely don't want my son to see me that way. I don't want my final days to be hell. I want my final days to be as happy as possible, and I want to live my life until, until it's no longer, until the bad outweighs the good.
In the lawsuit, Wallner and 3 other plaintiffs claim they have a constitutional right to have a physician aid them in death and prescribe life-ending medication.
SB 128 is about how we die in California. Not an easy conversation to have.
Wallner also supports California's SB 128, the end-of-life bill, currently making its way through the state legislature. We saw her praying during a recent vote in the state Senate. If passed, California would become the 6th and by far the largest state to offer an end option to terminally ill patients.
What's the difference between the current practice of doctors withholding food, withholding nutrition, withholding water, and this?
Torture? I mean, the only difference that I can see is that I get to suffer. And that's a pretty horrific thing. That's the only difference.
What's wrong with the law being proposed here in California?
This is a Band-Aid solution that over the long term is going to make matters worse.
Dr. Aaron Cariotti is a medical ethicist at UC Irvine and a staunch opponent of assisted suicide. Proponents of this law say there are safeguards in place, so it's not misused.
We know in Oregon less than 6% of patients who have died by assisted suicide were ever referred for psychiatric consultation. Back when they were tracking this data, only 13% of patients got a palliative care referral to have a conversation with the expert on end-of-life care before getting the prescription for the deadly drug.
Oregon's Public Health Division says these concerns have not become reality. Oregon was the first state to pass a death with dignity law back in 1997. Since then, more than 850 people have ended their lives, mostly cancer patients with good medical care, like Wallner.
I don't know any terminal patient who wants to die. I just think we just don't want to drag our death out. We're going to die. If it comes to that point where there's no more that I can do, my body is failing, my organs are shutting down, then all that's left is to die. And it can either be slow and painful or under my terms.
But Cariotti, who admits he's influenced by his Catholic faith, warns of a slippery slope.
If this would be a benefit to someone who can make the request, physicians get used to saying, well, it would also be of benefit to a person who can't make the request. So we move logically from voluntary physician-assisted suicide for terminal ill patients to patients that have other problems but not terminal illnesses to non-voluntary euthanasia for patients who are incapacitated, can't speak for themselves, and the doctor or the hospital, deems it appropriate to go ahead and end their life.
What do you say to the opposition?
With the physicians, I would say, it was my choice to have treatment. It's my choice to stop treatment. If it's a religious opposition, the God that I believe in does not want me to suffer. The God that I believe in is about love and hope and prayer and companionship and benevolence, not about suffering.
So why all the fresh produce?
Because I think that it probably supports my health and healing. It's certainly.
Wallner is still fighting to extend her life. Weekly trips to a farmer's market, fueling her body with organic foods, hoping it buys her extra time.
I'm going to take this and some bok choy.
If this does not become law in California,
What will you do?
There are medications, you know. I mean, I walk out of the hospital every time I have a procedure with untold amounts of medication. So I really, honestly, I don't know what I would do. But I'm not going to... It won't be a slow, painful death. Not going to happen.
You're going to control it if you can.
Yep. Absolutely.
On a personal note, it was such an honor to meet everyone during these intimate moments in their lives. I walked away realizing that our time here is precious, and all sides are equally passionate, not just about their plans to die, but also about living their life. That's it for us here at America Tonight. Tell us what you think at aljazeera.com/America Tonight. You can also join the debate on Facebook or Twitter using the hashtag #DeathDebate. And come back, we'll have more of America Tonight tomorrow.